that old man got the tractor beam out of commission, or this is going to be a real short trip. Okay, hit it!
Good evening, everybody.
How's it going?
Evening, CeeCee. Good. Thanks for joining me. And, well, actually, that's joining you, Chris, tonight, technically. So tonight we are going to do, basically, it's maybe like a one-off. Might be a one-off. Might kind of continue here and there.
Nah, we're going to continue it.
Yeah, it's not going to be like a regularly scheduled program, but we're
going to do it every week.
Forward. Yeah, we'll do it every week.
Every week.
But, yeah, possibly. But moving forward with that, tonight we're going to do a showcase, and this is on the Slave 1. So basically, we're going to go over the work in progress pictures and the start to finish of the Slave 1 build that Chris had done. I took a little part in this. We kind of did like a little bit of a deep dive, which we'll go over in a little bit more detail and show you everything before we unveil like the full finished piece. And what we did, I guess, kind of happened accidentally, Chris, which was one of those things where the more reference images we saw, the closer, like we had a few discussions as you were building it, and then decided like, let's go as close as possible to the ILM model. So yeah, that's screws and all. So that's what we're doing here tonight. And hopefully this is something that, you know, have a little bit of fun doing and can revisit and do again, you know, pretty soon.
Yeah. So, I mean, Slave 1 is a very popular vehicle. There was 3 that I wanted to do. Okay, so originally, you know, I'm very new to modeling, and I never done modeling before. So there was a deal that was gonna happen, but it fell through, and I was gonna get the Falcon and the AT-AT and there's Snowspeeder, right? Was it Snowspeeder, Jason? Something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly early on. Yeah.
Yeah, and that fell through, but I wanted to have an AT-AT. I wanted to have a Millennium Falcon, and then I wanted to have a Slave 1. So this is a Mike Salzo kit from EFX. And I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with, you know, that what's considered a garage kit. It's basically a kit that's not manufactured. It's made in somebody's garage or workshop, and you know, it's not always perfect. It's not by numbers. It's a lot of cutting, sanding, filing, gluing your fingers together. It's
cutting your fingertips off. This isn't something you go to the store, buy in a box, and you know, take the pieces off and assemble by numbers. And that journey was definitely, we'll get into more, was more than interesting, but also frustrating. There was a lot involved. And CeeCee, out of curiosity, have you? I know being part of the group, you're familiar with studio scale and all that, but are you really familiar with like how deep it goes with trying to get one of these kits together and assemble it, and like the frustrations and headache that go into it?
No, she's quiet.
Oh,
I lost her sound. She was good before. No. Let me see if I can do something. No.
Oh, that's odd.
No, she was fine before. You want to just jump out and jump back in? Try that?
Yeah. I was just curious. So yeah, there's just, I think it's a good way to go about it, Chris, by letting people know that like this is a really rough.
Yeah.
No, I mean this is not for amateurs, and it's a very crude way of approaching something. But you also have to take into consideration like the guys who are assembling these kits, they're not doing it for you to just take piece A, piece B, piece C, and have it be like a paint by numbers or build by numbers. Yes. This is years and years of work and images and details, and multiple people involved with submitting, you know, different shots from the tours.
Finding out what parts go on.
Yeah.
Like, because most people, I'm sure a lot of people know, but if you don't, a lot of these studio scale models are made by ILM, and they take model kits that were around in the 70s and take pieces of them and put them on, just to make them look sci-fi or from that world, you know, which is what we, you know, you and I, we had a lot of conversations about, you know, finding all these parts, you know, and a lot, you know, there's a lot of people who put a lot of time and effort into researching these parts. You don't have CeeCee yet.
Yeah, the researching of the parts while you're working on that, Chris, the researching of the parts is one of those things where, ironically, as we're saying, you know, these are these crude kits that are sort of pieced together over time, but the original models were actually built from actual model kits, whether they were tanks or sports cars or, you know, just a number of things. But some pieces, some model kits are more popular than others, where they would source parts from and use those, you know, more commonly, just because it was easier to reuse parts and access parts like that. And some of these kits are actually still made today by some of the same companies.
Oh, a lot of them are.
Yeah, like some of the planes, some of the tanks, some of the guns. You can still go into a model shop today and buy them, which is interesting. You know, some of them are harder to come by, but some are still made. And so those were compiled, and you'll start to notice, you know, not only through some of the images that we show today, but also as we do other shows moving forward, that one piece you'll notice will be like, oh, that looks familiar. Oh, that's part of a speeder bike, or that's part of the you know, AT-AT, and they've been reused over and over. So that's the kind of cool part. It has a little bit of what we've talked about a few times, Chris, which is well known, like sort of a found parts aspect to it. You know, and making those discoveries on these quote unquote found parts is really exciting. So yeah, this is gonna be a lot of fun because a lot of work went into this. So I hope that we can
yeah, a lot of these model kit parts actually are like you said, they're used on multiple ships. Like Slave One has an engine from a Harrier aircraft. So does it's on the Sandcrawler. It's on the AT-AT. It's on something else too. But it's very recognizable. Do you want to talk to CeeCee and see if we can get her? She says she's backstage, but it's not showing her backstage. It's showing her just as black screen.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to reach her.
And I'll let you handle the comments. You handle the comments too, Jason. So I can handle the pictures then. So, and a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people, again, I'm sure a lot of people know, but studio scale is not one specific scale. It's not one specific size. It's basically the size that they used in the studio. Like the TIE Bomber is real small, but Slave One is real big. You know, Slave One is 1/24th size, you know. And like this kit is not hard to, is pretty hard to come by. It's not made anymore. It's not made anymore. Mike Salzo doesn't make them any longer, and it costs quite a bit, you know, and it's a rough kit. Like there's a lot of cutting and trimming, and everything was working right before we went live, and then all of a sudden she's off.
Yeah, I'll check in with her in a second and get that going, but I don't want to interrupt the stream too much.
Okay. So I'm just going to go through a bunch of pictures. Like we're going to do there have quite a few, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each individual picture. Oh, where'd you get that picture from? That corner thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, just since we're talking about the Slave One, I figured I'd get that up there.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. All right. So here we'll do this. And so this is the box. This is like when I first got it, I opened, you open, it's huge. It's in a, there's a lot of pieces to it. And once you open it, and I don't even know how many pieces exactly there are in all this, but you use every one of these pieces. And looking at this kit here, you think everything's there. No, it's not. Oh, there she is. There she is.
Can you hear me?
Real quick.
Yes.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Sorry.
There we go.
No worries. All right, so CeeCee, real quick before I didn't mean to get get you cut off, Chris. But going forward is, like I said, we know you're familiar with the studio scale just from being part of the group. But I guess going a little bit deeper, like what you're seeing here, for example, this is one of those things where what's assumed, or the understanding of, because seeing a finished product is a lot different than the process of start to finish. Is this something that's like completely new to you, or?
I mean, I think I get the gist, especially I think the culture of garage kits and kind of, being disappointed with anything you can get that was licensed and kind of having to make do. But I think I have mentioned this before, maybe to Matt. I think just the idea of it is so incredibly overwhelming and this is something I want to ask Chris, in doing research on these models, I feel like it's either an overwhelming amount of source material or an underwhelming amount of source material, or you're getting conflicting reports almost. Like, well, in this picture it looks like the bottom of the ship looks like this, and then in another picture or in another resource or in another book it looks entirely different. That would drive me bonkers. I don't know if that's something that happens a lot.
It is.
Yeah,
because there's no instructions in garage kits, and honestly there's a lot of reference material for a lot of ships, but for some reason Slave One, there's almost zero. Like there's it's really hard to come by, other than pictures on the internet, finding that people took pictures in a museum of the actual ship.
Yeah.
There's no rhyme or reason. There's no instructions on where these things go, these pieces go.
Which can be completely frustrating. And another thing, Chris, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but for those who are unfamiliar, there's also this thing that seems to be taken as if it's ill-spoken or sort of ill-gotten. But when there are some instructions or any relatable instructions that you can reference, they're usually kind of held back and they're sort of hush-hush. And that's not to be, it's done by design, but not in a way to limit anybody or restrict anybody from being able to do this. It's just that you have to keep in mind that so many years, not weeks, not months, but literally years have gone into, piecing these things together, but then also piecing them together properly. And it's done by so much trial and error that it's held very close to the chest. And they don't just put it out there for anybody and everybody to do, because you have to keep in mind, like, this is years of dedication from multiple people working together. And, as time goes on, another person may discover something new or figure out something new, learn something new. So it's one of those reasons why, it's not just posted anywhere and everywhere. So that's another part of the challenge. And it's also another reason why people, even if they do have the skill set, still pay $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to these pieces because of the challenge and limitations involved with putting something like this together and completing it. So it's quite the feat.
Another problem is that some of these parts are actually, people don't even know what model kits they came from. A lot of it is because there was years of guys deep diving and looking at every freaking model that's been around during that time. But there's still a lot of, like, okay, so, I had a couple people actually help me. You and I did a lot of talking about this, and John Simmons also, I talked to a lot about this. He was pretty helpful with a lot of pieces that I didn't know where they went, and because there's no instructions. So, and then on top of that, there's no list of pieces. Like, you don't know if you have everything or not. Okay. And like this kit, there are a lot of pieces missing, and there's also a lot of pieces that aren't in the kit that you can buy models to put on the kit. So yeah, it's no instructions, Sean, no instructions at all. So I'm going to keep going. It's just to give you an idea of like how some of these pieces come. There's a lot of like flashing you got to clean off and file off, and I'll be honest, when I first got this stuff, I'm looking at these pieces thinking, where the hell do all these go? I have no idea.
Is that my floor?
Yeah, that's your floor. That's your
okay.
picture you sent me. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I think you sent me this picture too.
This is when we were trying to figure out. Yeah, this is when we were trying to do like a parts list, almost like figuring out what, like, what's missing, and that's another thing with these kits. A lot of times, more often than not, you'll get a kit and there's a number of parts missing, and that's not any fault to one person or the other. It's just that, again, because you're trying to identify and figure out what goes with what, it happens often, and it's something that is easily rectifiable to an extent. You just say, hey, I'm missing piece A or piece B, or you could just kind of go out and try to, I guess, piece those pieces together yourself. But yeah, this is an example of that.
Plus,
Trying to get
Jason,
together pieces that were
like, this looks like a piece of a model kit. This here and this, they don't look like pieces of model.
like anything. Yeah, kind of scratch
but
built almost.
They're scratch built. They're cast from scratch built pieces, and they are important. They're these three pieces are actually these four pieces are actually very important. So you just have no idea, and it's kind of maddening a little bit. It's
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did I call you Jason, and I'm like pulling out whatever left hair I have left, and it's just, yeah. So, well, first, this is when I started taking pictures. Okay. Is when because I was so frustrated with the cockpit, I couldn't figure out where things went, because there's really not a lot of good pictures of inside the cockpit. This is where and I actually started doing some videos to, putting it together and painting it, but that just became a pain in the ass. So I stopped doing that. This was much better idea, Jason, that you came up with, is just document it all, and then we'll do one show, showing how it goes. So what do you think, CeeCee? Is this something you think you'd want to get involved in, like start cutting? And
I'm just really awful about starting projects, not finishing them. That's my problem. And like
I
I
am
don't have a Linda who's gonna yell at me if it's on my kitchen counter for like a month, but still.
She actually didn't. She was actually pretty damn good about it. Like, she was like, I put it on the dining room table and then in the kitchen table. So now my workshop is pretty much done. So, but this is part of the cockpit also. This is like all the pieces to the cockpit, and even this, it was like trying to figure out how they go together, and I was pulling my hair out. Like, I had no idea. I didn't even know, like, you have to cut off this, cut this here, and cut this here, and to get it all together.
Well, what about I don't want to spoil anything if you already plan on talking about this, but I know you probably use the ArchiveX paints.
Yes, I did.
But
yes.
Is there like a list somewhere that someone's compiled that says like it's this shade of green on this part or in this section?
Good question.
There is not. Okay. But
it's all referenced by eye, right?
Well, not for me. Okay. Luckily, before I started painting, Guy Cohen, the founder of ArchiveX, did a couple posts on ArchiveX giving like the formula. So I can't take any credit for how this turned out with I had some idea what colors to use, but after reading his posts, there were parts in there that I wouldn't even thought of. Like, I'm very happy and thankful that he did put that in there, because like, I wanted it to look fucking perfect. Like, it would drive me nuts if I painted it and found out that there was a step that I had missed. Even though it looked good, it would still drive me nuts.
Or like an obscure color that you look at it and you're like, no, this must be a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, I watched the video today. Don't throw me off the stream, but I was watching Sideshow's video of them painting the Batman Begins premium format, and like the blue washes on the skin and to represent capillaries and all that kind of stuff. That's not something that you think of when you think of a project like this. Those kind
you're
of
right, like the red and
subtle
blues.
nuances. Yeah, you have to. Someone has to tell you it's there for you to really notice it.
Like on the wing wells, okay, you lay down a color, and then you put a wash on, and then you put the latex on, and then you do a different wash of a different color, and then you spray it you mist it with a third color, and then you take off the latex, and then you mist it with another 3 more colors. So how ArchiveX paints really work and just, I don't know what the word is, like they blend together and they work together so that just gives you that right ILM tone by the layers. It works with layers, you know. So
They mimic the old flow quill paints
yes,
used
yes.
during the 70s and 80s when they worked on these. But even that, I think that's such a good question, CC, because there's a lot of people who build models. They just take this for granted because this is second nature to them, right? But then you have people who are maybe good at it or getting into it, and there's a little bit of challenge. And part of that is again, because there is no specific instructions to the build, to the paint color, to how to apply the paint, you're using reference images. But you also have to take into consideration everything can affect those reference images, from, a Polaroid that was taken in 1978, or something that, you're looking at a picture of a picture. You're looking at it on a monitor or a tablet, and
Plus,
that can
Jason,
affect the colors and styles.
People take these pictures, they're using different kinds of flash. So
Yeah, that's
colors look completely different
different.
in
Yeah.
warm white to cool white. It's just, and luckily what I did was any and every picture that I could find of Slave One, whether it be somebody else's build or
Pieces in people's collections, finished
yes,
ones. Yeah.
finished ones, and every single reference picture I contrasted and compared to see, okay, well, that build doesn't have this piece, this build has this. And even then it was difficult because I was also seeing pictures of progress. So, you look at this thing, it looks finished, but it's really not, because there's still pieces added on top of it. So,
or even colors, Chris. Remember, we'd be like, wow,
yes,
that looks so light. That looks so dark. Why does this look so much darker than this?
right.
And trying to figure all that out. And it was a lot of fine tuning. And yeah.
See, so this cockpit here is the base color. Okay, that's the base color. And then you missed it with another color, and you missed it with two more colors to get a different look, which is, I'll show that then. But here is the fiber optics that I put into the cockpit. Like they're in the cockpit, and then you put them through to the back, and then down in here is where I have the LEDs. That basically, you take an LED, you put a little straw on it, and then you put those fiber optics in, and it shines through the fiber optic to the, it's end to end light. You know what I mean? That was fun. that was definitely a fun thing to do. So here's, like I said, remember the other color, the other picture was a base color green. This has the washes and the misting and the
layers and the subtractive layers. And
yes. Yeah. Like, so here you put latex on, and then you paint those different layers and take it off. A little bit closer.
Oh, there's some great pics, Chris, huh? Got some really detailed images.
Yeah, this is pretty close. And I did the cockpit. This is really close up. I did the cockpit first. I painted it all completely, and then put it in the ship, and then taped over it so I could paint and build the rest of the ship.
And the cockpit was met with its own challenges as well. I mean, that was,
that was the beginning.
Trying to get additional parts, trying to figure things out. I mean, there was a day where I was like literally running out in the pouring rain, trying to like overnight packages, and like, you have this piece, you have that piece, and I mean, there's a lot. But here's the crazy thing. As frustrating as that sounds to a lot of people, where they're like, "Oh, what a nightmare! I would never want to, go down that road or take on this endeavor." It actually, when all said and done, it's part of that. It's like collecting, right? Part of the fun is the chase. Getting that grail, getting that piece. If it was as easy as just, hey, I want this, I'm going to buy it and get it. Like, that takes a little bit of the momentum and the fun out of it. Yeah. So when you're building, that's part of the process. And as frustrating as it can be, because you're so, involved in it, it does become part of the process that brings the enjoyment as well. Because the end result is, you reach that point, and that satisfaction and realizing like, wow, it's all finally starting to come together. It does make it part of it.
This was another interesting find. Remember, Jason, we didn't know. Like, I was thinking there's one piece that has all these like lines, but it turns out that there's just a whole bunch of different tees. Like, what was it called? I don't even remember now. Like, it was plaster.
They were almost like miniature plastic. lines.
Yeah,
They're like
plaster chalk,
plain
yeah.
diamond ones.
And then you glue them all in line, and then you
This
cut
is good
them.
for reference. That right
Yeah.
there is a good reference shot, Chris, because in the previous image they look large, but this goes to
Yes.
show you how tiny they really are. And those are you cut those all by hand, right?
Individually, yeah, and glued them down by hand. And yeah, so you can see they're using a tweezers to get them all in line, to give you. Let's see if I get, where is it? That right there. So that's, and again, that's from John Simmons. He told me that. I'm like, what part is this? You know, where's this part? He's like, nope, that's, you got to build that on, you know, separately. It's just,
Yeah, when you
but
think
like
you're missing
Cursing up a
something.
storm trying to do all of that.
yes.
Oh, CeeCee, you have
And gluing my fingers together.
I'd like exhale too much, or on like, you know, just like laugh or
Yeah.
chuckle, then all of a sudden they're all over my kitchen floor. Like, hell no. That's
You know how I would joke about on some of the streams I would joke about him missing like the exits, because there'd be a point where like, you know, where does this part go, or am I missing this part? I don't think I'm in. I'd be on the phone with him, and it'd get to a point where like, oh man, I just missed my exit. I get driving up, oh, I just missed a second exit. You know, and it was just like because of the
I miss like
obsessiveness.
3 or 4 sometimes.
Yeah, and it's just like because you're so laser focused in on like, well, what about this and what about that? Because think about it. Let's say you're 45% through your builds, and you have one piece in particular hindering your you know moving forward.
Yeah.
It's just it is maddening sometimes. It really is.
So giving you what's going on here in these pictures is this, you know, this is how the model kit comes. But if you look at the reference material, there's God, why am I spacing on the names of these? This is Jason, what is this called?
Which part?
that I glued on.
The styrene there.
The styrene, yeah. The styrene,
you know, make that depth and layer. Yeah.
Yeah, to give it like a different panel, a raised panel look. Okay. And right here is where I mentioned before, there are model kit parts that specifically on the hull, the outside hull, that you add on to give it more of the, you know, making it more screen accurate. So like here and here.
So you have the garage kit. To summarize just a little bit, I think I get it. So you have the garage kit, and then you're having to source model pieces, and then also build your own pieces out of styrene.
Yes.
Okay.
You realize my maddening.
You're gonna have John Bird hands. I'm worried for you now. After all this.
You know, if I don't have bad hands by now, you know, I'm an electrician. I use my hands all day long. I doubt I'm going to get any. Well, I probably will now that I had mentioned it. But yeah, like so here's the cockpit. It's all painted up and covered up, and then, you know, I'm putting all these pieces on the outside hull before I even start doing inside it underneath.
Now, Chris, this particular one, is this? I know this is a larger piece, but is this this is 1/24th, right? Yeah,
it is 1/24th. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Just AJ187 was asking, so just letting him know. Salzo kit and studio scale, obviously, but 1/24th kit. Just I always like to clarify because, you know, there's the 1/18, there's 1/40, because there's this misconception that people just assume that if it's studio scale automatically means 1/24th, which isn't always the case. You do have ones that are, you know, 1/18, you know, 1/48, things like
5
that.
foot, 5 foot,
yeah,
you know, 8 foot Star Destroyer. You know, there's all different sizes.
But what sets that? So what determines what's, so like 5 feet, is that like, oh, this Star Destroyer is 5 feet and it's studio scale because is this the size that they used on the production? Mm-hmm. Like this is what they considered.
Yes, that's basically that's exactly what it is, CeeCee. So when the term studio scale is used, at least in the modeling community, that's basically referencing exactly the size, like you said or mentioned, used in the film. For example, like the Falcon. You know, there's various sizes of the Falcon, and like the AT-ATs, you have, you know, one AT-AT that's, you know, large. I think for this 4 foot or 5 foot one versus one that's, you know, maybe 19, 20 inches roughly. These are all approximations. I don't know the exact inches, but yeah. So the studio scale term is in reference to what was used on screen. So studio scale is kind of like a broad term. But for example, you have like the TIE fighters. Those are considered it's like a 1/6 figure. It's 1/6 that of the life size person. So that's what the vehicle would be. It's 1/24th the size of what it would be if it was a real life ship. Like the TIE Bomber, that's 1/48th. So that's the size that they use on screen. So when you build a model, it's this big versus a TIE Fighter, which is this big. So yeah, it's the studio scale term is interesting because everybody just automatically goes to 1/24th because that was the most common size used. But there are multiple variations, and it coincides with the size used on screen for any movie or any model.
So, first of all, like these T-tracks that I told you about earlier, those are actually my favorite part on the whole model. Like I love how those things look on the model. I'm so glad that I was able to get that information from John Simmons and do it the right, correct way, because it would drive me nuts if I didn't. So David asks, did you paint the model in your dining room? How did you handle air ventilation and paint overspray? I would imagine the paint fuse will be an issue. Yes, they were an issue. I opened the windows and doors so that airflow would go through. And I did it. I mostly painted all three of these models when either A, nobody was home, or B, they were either sleeping or early mornings. So that, like, my wife gets migraines if she breathes any kind of weird fume. So I had to make sure that the whole place was completely aired out. And then sometimes I didn't, and I heard about it. So yeah.
Well, then you go to like blow your nose and it's coming out,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you,
Caboose
when
Red.
when I did the Falcon, I didn't wear a respirator, and I had headaches almost every night. Like now I paint nothing without a respirator on. Nothing. Not even.
Yeah.
I don't even use paint thinner or anything without a respirator because I was getting major headaches and it was killing me.
Oh, it's important. Even like the filler, the putty, all that. I mean, that stuff will set you spinning.
Yeah. So Benjamin says, I thought Archive X was pre-thinned. Archive X acrylic is pre-thinned. But if you use it for airbrushing, you still have to add a little more. It's 70-30, 70% paint, 30% thinner to get it to flow through the airbrush real well. Now, the enamels are not pre-thinned. So basically you're taking the enamel and mixing it 50-50, cutting it 50-50 with paint thinner.
And did you use mostly enamel or acrylic?
I used enamel for my Falcon. I used enamel for my Sandcrawler. Slave One, I used all acrylic, except later on I'll show you. There's a lot of staining on the Slave One. There's a lot of different like browns and reds and rust colors that are stains. I like using the enamels for weathering. I don't really like using the acrylics for weathering.
Is it a viscosity situation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It just flows better.
I saw Adam Savage. He did a video not too long ago where he and it's Norm weathered a Black Series Mando, and they were using Archive X, and they were talking about how thin it is naturally and how easy it is to weather with them for that reason.
Yeah, I honestly like. I don't know. I like enamels better, but they're a lot messier. They're a lot more toxic.
Yep.
But the acrylics are great. I mean, don't get me wrong; they're great. I prefer a little bit to use enamels, especially for weathering. So here, like just to show you, like there's these Allen wrench screws that are on this Slave One. They are not in the kit, but I drilled the holes, put the screws in. I wanted it to look like the actual prop. Here's
these are all the little details that we were spotting going through the reference images, and I'd be like, you get the screw here and this piece here, and
this is the mount. Okay, so the reason why it's really strapped down like this is because I epoxied it, and it ended up breaking. Like it came apart. So you have that mount has to be solid. So that sucker is screwed down and epoxied.
Well, that's the main, just so people know, that's the main center point. So when this thing is on display, that's basically where it's being held.
Yeah.
And as we go through the images and then you're showing some of the more finer details, Chris, like the reference of like where there's, you know, screw holes where they used it for access holding something together. Originally, that wasn't the plan until we started dissecting all these images and realizing like, well, look at this and look at that. And eventually it was like, hey, let's make it as, well, not let's, it's your model, but as we were discussing, it was like, hey, why don't you go as close as you can as possible? And then that's when that came into play. And I think that made it even for you more enjoyable. And then that's when more of the deep dive started. Yeah.
I love deep diving and finding out it's frustrating, but it's also rewarding to find, you know, when I'm going through a model kit, okay, looking for a specific piece, and I go in there and I'm looking and I'm like, oh, that's one of the cast pieces. So I would use the actual model piece on Slave 1 instead of using the piece that was cast. And I would get such a thrill out of finding it in the model, the actual like tank model kit.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm sure a lot of people already ID'd it and know what it is. But for me, just finding it in that kit, I was like, oh, shit, that's cool. Look at that. But Robin's asking, do you seal each layer or just at the end? I'd seal any of these layers. The enamel, you don't need to seal. It's pretty sturdy. It's pretty damn sturdy. And the acrylic is also pretty bulletproof. I didn't seal any layers. So
yeah,
that was
there's not really there's not a lot of handling.
No, but even still,
these pieces.
No, that's not true. I'm handling this sucker.
Well, I mean, once you have this finally like up on display and finalized, there's, you know, like completed.
I think I'm spoiling some stuff for later in the stream, but did you have any issues with like, say, using latex and the latex lifting up layers without sealing?
No, latex was great. Latex, it goes on, it dries fast, and like you put a layer on, you could peel it off with your thumb and it comes off so easily. It doesn't, not hard at all. No.
Yeah, you kind of just roll it like it.
So this, yeah. Well, actually, I was rolling it. Okay. So when you spray the paint over top of it in the latex, when you go to take it off, it flakes off that the paint that's over top of the latex. So it was getting everywhere, and it was also going into the pores of the kit. So it was like it was darkening the colors that I didn't want darkened. So I took a very light masking tape and went over it to get all those little dusty pieces of paint, and it held. It didn't take off any of the paint off of the model. It took out the paint that was dusted all over. Yeah. So the wings might be one of the most difficult part of the whole thing. What you're looking at is there's a bar in the middle, and then all of these other pieces are just laid on top. There's no like way they fit in perfectly. You're kind of just laying them on, gluing them. It's kind of a difficult process. It took me a while to actually figure out exactly how it was supposed to go.
Well, especially when you have pieces that are not visible, Chris, right?
Right.
There was some things running into like there may be 3 or 4 pieces that once assembled, you're never going to see them, but they're there and they're part of the assemblage. So you're assuming visually that, okay, piece A goes with piece B, but if you don't see piece A and it's hidden under piece B and C, that creates a little bit more of a challenge as well. And I think the wings are definitely an infamous part of the kit for that reason.
There's a part on the back that if they didn't show pictures in the Chronicles book of it being built, you would have no idea. Like there's 2 hoods that cover up down the center, and you would have no idea what's underneath that if they didn't show that process build. I'll show it later because I actually did something so I could still see that. Like I said, these are the wings. You know, I was handling this piece, but I didn't really realize how big it was until I put it together and held it up and like put the wings on. It's freaking massive, you know.
And then even more so, you're what, 6'2", approximately, give or
6'1".
take?
6'1".
6'1". So that just goes to show this is this thing's a big boy. It's a beast.
And what this picture doesn't show is how I'm struggling to hold this sucker up. It's fucking heavy. It is.
You getting the Jimmy arm, like the shakes?
Well, no, I don't get Jimmy arms ever, but so
Yeah.
it's heavy. It's
Chris
really
is literally flexing on us right now.
Hey,
heavy. So yeah, but again, I'm just like these are painted images of the wings, and like it shows there the yellow. Okay, this is pre-misted, pre-weathered. This is just basically base colored, and then you mist it with other colors to give it that aged old look effect. But like the yellow is where you put the latex, and then you base coat it yellow, spray it, put the latex on, and then spray it with this reefer white, and then you take off all the latex, which that's what gives you the.
Crystal John's asking, what about pieces from model kits that are out of production, and how expensive does that get?
Well, there's one specific. Well, there's two. There's two models that are part of the Slave One that are. There's a Ferrari that is. It's still, you can still get it for $150. Okay, but then there's an NTEX Porsche that is no longer made. And if you didn't have somebody who casted one and put it in like Mike Salzo casted pieces from this Porsche and put it in the kit. If you didn't get that, if you just want to do an all found parts Slave One, that kit alone costs $1,500, and you have to cut it up. Like if you got a $1,500 model of a Porsche, you're cutting off the doors and just the paneling on the side. It's so
yeah, it definitely can. In that sense, it can get pricey. I mean, there's even times where like people will sell completed models of maybe like a tank or a race car or whatever that they finished, painted, completed, and they're selling that as a finished piece. And because you need a specific piece off it, it's kind of like blasphemy, but you're buying that piece just to ransack it and break it apart to get the piece you need. But it can get a little challenging in that sense.
I think I bought like 10 model kits, and some of them, like one specifically, this little artillery tank. It's not even a tank. It's like it's something, I don't even know what they call it.
The flak.
The flak. The flak. Yeah. That one has a lot of pieces from this sucker. But like I bought one that was $80, and I literally took a piece off that was like that big, one freaking piece that big, just to get exactly what I wanted. So like this picture here kind of shows you so this is base colored, okay, just all the regular colors, and then this one here shows you misting and weathering and like how it changes the look. But this is all the layers and the staining and stuff. Like there's the one that I showed you originally, the red with the red stripe.
Yep. What's interesting is in addition to the parts, to the colors, for example, the reds, the greens, you'll notice, like for example with Archive X, or any paints for that matter, in addition to the parts, a lot of the models across Star Wars use a lot of similar colors, a lot of similar weathering techniques. There's a lot of similarity and continuity in the overall style and design. Some of it to give that overall Star Wars look of the lived-in world, but also for productivity and efficiency purposes, which kind of makes it a little bit easier as you start going further in and doing more pieces and doing more kits.
So what I found really interesting is, I didn't know this. I had never painted a model before, and I really never airbrushed or painted anything. Is like also these Archive, I'm sure it was all paints, but I noticed a lot with Archive X's. The base color, like what colored primer you use. If it's a dark primer, it's going to change the tone of the paint layers on top of it. Like this white for the wing here, if you spray it on over top of this yellow, it gives you this kind of like I don't know what color you would say that is, like a tannish almost. But if you spray it over top of just a gray primer, it looks like a totally different color. You know what I'm saying? So you also have to know what's underneath the layer, the paint, the whites to get the look that you want.
Now, is that proprietary information as well, or are you able to source information like that?
Yeah, that's hand-me-downs. That's coming from
Yeah,
people who I don't.
It's interesting how many models. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No,
I was gonna say it's interesting how many models that are like painted black underneath, for example. Like you think a base coat of a light gray or a white or just a basic primer, but some of them actually have black. So when they go to chip away at it and show like damage, the black comes through as potential, nicks and bumps or blaster marks. And it's really interesting how they did that and how it affected the colors and how the colors work together. That I feel like is a whole nother science in and of itself.
See now,
reminds me of the RS helmet. Was it the HDPE had the red primer?
Yeah.
Yep.
Correct.
And I apologize,
Yep.
Chris. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you're right,
I've been
CeeCee.
talking too much. Yeah.
That's all I wanted to throw out there because I try to equate all this to things I already know. So like RS discussed the red, and it's like, how the heck would you have found that out unless you had your hands on the real deal?
Right.
So I
as they start to break apart, you see the
Yeah.
red showing through. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. Yeah, and what's funny is the red really served no function. Well, I'm sure it did to a point, but and that's the thing, figuring out with the builds as well and painting them, because you're trying to get those right colors, and it's really interesting.
I honestly have to thank John Simmons a lot, because with paint specifically, like if I wouldn't have gotten it from him, I would have been trying to find that white color. I wouldn't have known to spray the reefer white over top of the yellow. Like I wouldn't have known that, and like I'm very inexperienced. I relied on people who have a lot more knowledge than me of this shit. So these pistons, they're actually brass tubes that you cut up and put inside of each other. This wing is actually movable, like it like flips up and turns, and then the arm there kind of fits into this one space. I changed it a little bit. I took this off, and I have magnets back here, so I can just take this whole thing off if I ever need to pull the wing out and change the position, so it doesn't scratch up anything. What did Brum? Yeah. More wing. Okay, so this is the bottom, right? And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different pieces, and there's no instructions. It's all just looking at a lot of pictures and finding out. Like, there's a piece here. Okay, so like this black piece here, I had no idea what the hell it was. It drove me nuts trying to figure out what it was, and I was just going to scratch build and put a little piece of styrene on, but I think it was John who told me that it's this Rocco mini tank, and I looked on eBay for a long time for this little tank, and nobody was selling any. Then just one day, some guy put up like 5 of them that were already pre-assembled, pre-painted. I feel bad because I bought them all and I ripped all these models apart. Just that somebody put work into building these things. I took it off just to get that little black square there. I felt bad, but not too much.
It's worth it, Chris. Don't worry.
It's worth it. Yeah. So like you see this part here, this is on the back of the Sandcrawler. Now
it's also on the AT-AT, right, Chris?
Yep, the AT-AT, and I think there's a couple others, but I don't know.
It's like the speeder bike vents are on here, right? The vents at the back of the speeder bike are on there. Yeah.
Yep, right there.
There's a few as you start to look through, things start to look familiar.
Oh yeah, and then you look at other models and you're like, oh yeah, I know that part. Oh yeah, I know that part. Like this part here is on. There's 2 of them. Is on the back of the ATST. Okay. They just pulled these pieces. This here, Jason, is on the bottom of the probe droid.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
So
okay.
And like I said earlier,
Yeah,
this
you're right. It's there.
this here gets covered up with some hoods from a Ferrari and from the Ferrari.
Which you'll find on Leia Boge's helmet.
Yeah.
It's on the top of her helmet. Yeah.
But what I did was, I'll show you later, but I put magnets on the hoods so that I could take them off because I wanted to be able to see this detail underneath. And like, see these little black things right here, these little black triangles. Those are also and most of the stuff that's black is from sourced model kits that I bought and took, one piece off of, like these guns and all these black parts. Yeah, and here's another one closer.
That's an amazing shot right there. That's a great reference image for anybody looking to do a build or in the middle of a build. Or
these kind of shots where there's no paint helped immensely. Like I had a whole bunch from a bunch of different people off the RPF, and these are the shots that I was able to say, okay, this piece goes here. Okay, this piece goes here. When it's painted, it's a lot more difficult to see. Yeah, it blends together. So, okay, this is the wing wells, and these are more like parts that I had no idea what would, like this part here is covered up with another part that goes across here. You don't see it other than in one. I saw it in one picture where I could see just this little piece right here, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta add it on there. I have to, even though you don't see it, it's still in there.
The Molex connectors, yeah.
Molex connectors, yeah. More wing. Okay, so starting to paint the bottom. I did the bottoms, the lower half first. There's just so many layers here. There's like a green, and then there's a grime color that lightens the green, and it's just so interesting to me. I don't know if a lot of people, some people don't care, but it's just something I
think when you start to like this is a perfect example for someone who just sees finished pieces. If we're doing a collector spotlight and you see them on display, you can appreciate them. They look great. When you're looking at it like this, yeah, it does seem overwhelming, but at the same time, I find it hard to believe that any fan of collecting would not look at this and have some intrigue or fascination. I mean, CeeCee, right? It's not, you're not looking at it saying like, oh, I want to go ahead and run out and try to undertake a project like this, but it kind of gives a little bit of like fascination and intrigue to be like, wow, like there's so much more to the overall piece than you would expect that meets the eye. And I think that, I don't know, I mean, some people might find it boring, but I found it extremely fascinating. I thought it was so fascinating.
I love it.
Especially the quote unquote found parts aspect of it.
Yeah. Found parts. And it's just like found parts of, let's say, a lightsaber. You're finding what model kit parts go where, it's the same exact thing. These two pictures here are actually good to show like the layers. Okay, so you have the light green, this is a dark green with a light tan over top, and then like it just changes when you add other layers on top of that. It's just more and more. That's how these paint work.
That's beautiful right there. That's a great image.
They work with layers. So I did the bottom first because I didn't want to paint the top and then have that sitting on. I built this foam thing so that it would hold it up. Then I could if I painted the top first and laid it in this foam thing, I'd be worried that it would scratch up the finished product. So I started with the bottom, and there it is, the whole bottom painted with the wings. That's pretty finished. And here, like I told you, these hoods
is what covers all of that, under piece that you don't see.
Yep. And like I said, I put magnets on because I wanted to be able to take it off and see it.
That's an excellent idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was, when he decided to do that, I was like, definitely, like, you got to go for that. And the wings, too, there was so much conversation of how people were posing it. Do I pose the wings, upright? Do I pose them downright? And, we were thinking about, like, well, how does it look in comparison to size, in comparison to how it's going to be displayed? So it's like, oh, go with the magnets. So this way you can go ahead and move them if you want. They're not static. Some people, I think, Chris, we found did them almost like ratchet style, where you can kind of like click them, right? Or like physically turn them in place. No, we didn't.
Well, you can turn them in place. You can. But I just found that I didn't want to do that because the pistons that I made out of the brass tubing, they don't slide in and out real well. I have a little bit of oil on them to lube them up, but I'd rather just
Not give that, not wear it down. Yeah.
Yes, I'd rather just unhook it, pull it out, turn it, put it back in. So, yeah. And like, here's more latex on, like I did the underneath the main hull. You know, this is just, these are copper wires going down here that I shaped and brought up around the side. And this is the latex that you lay down before you paint it. Why isn't it? There we go. So you can kind of see where it works. Mm-hmm. And like, okay, so then now I started painting, this is just primer. This is just primer. And then a base coat, which is a light gray. Outside, by the way, so I didn't get any fumes. And like I said, this is the base coat yellow for the wings. It's it doesn't look at all like the white, but you need that underneath to get that color for that white. It's big. It takes up. It's as big as most of my torso. Yeah. So this was a interesting thing that I absolutely love, and I can't take any credit for this. This was a hand-me-down from Mike Salzo. These are the original halogen bulbs, which are in a lot of workshop lights right now, and these are like 120 volt bulbs. So if you lit these up, they get really hot, and they would just melt everything. Okay, so what he said to do, well, I found this out from somebody else. It was Salzo who told somebody else, is to put a LED strip underneath it. Okay. Oh, nice. Thanks, Aaron. Put an LED strip underneath it and use these as dummy lights. And I just love how it looks when it's lit up. Oh, it didn't.
Yeah, because remember we were saying, we were like, well,
where is it?
How do you light those lights without them getting extreme? Remember we were like, these are going to get so hot if you try to actually light them. And
how did I skip one? Oh, come on. Let me find it. That's actually one of the better pictures I wanted to find. Oh, it's right there. How did I miss it? There.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because remember we were talking about how hot these would actually get if you lit the original bulb.
Yeah. It was next. I don't know why it didn't show up. So yeah, it just shines through and it illuminates those dummy bulbs. It's
perfectly, yeah.
Yeah. I honestly, when I lit it up, I was like, oh, it actually came out of my mouth. I was like shocked at how much I loved it.
Yeah, it looks great. It does. It looks fantastic.
And here you can see some of the staining, like down in here. Like this is staining. This is all stained in here, like to make it more dirty and grungy. So CeeCee, here's the latex.
Yeah.
Funny story. I sent this picture to my neighbor and I said, dude, I shouldn't have left the freaking thing outside. Bird shit all over it. And he actually believed me. He was like, are you serious? No. But what really sucks is I have this habit of painting something like the Falcon and the Sandcrawler and the first time, and I don't like it. So then I end up repainting it. Okay. A second time. So all of my models have been repainted twice. This is the part that was the most difficult and time consuming, is getting all that latex down. So I did it once, painted the whole thing, didn't like it, redid it over. I reprimed it, repainted it, and put that latex on a second time. It sucked. It was like, no. And that just peels off. Really easy.
You're using reference photos to try to determine where latex would have been put down.
Yep.
And of course you're running into the possibility that they could have put something else over top of it, and then even more latex over it. So you can't,
Yes.
it's not like it fits in perfectly together.
Yes.
Wow.
So
yeah.
like this is the base gray. Okay. And you spray this with a dark green. You go dark with this green. Okay. And then you take all of this latex off and you spray it with what's called a grime color. It's like a tan. Okay. And I'm sorry, take that back. You spray the green and then you actually put more latex on to go like to keep the gray color, and then you spray it with this grime, so it gives it this like scarring look. This has like 5 layers of different colors on it. So this I'll be able to show you. So there's the dark green, okay, and then what I would do is I would put a little bit of latex, not as much, but a little bit where, from using reference material where there's like really bright gray spots. So then after that, I would spray it with the grime. Well, there's a dark color. Okay, there's another. That's the second time I painted it. And then you spray it with this grime, and it gives it this lighter green color. Okay, you take that off, and then, oh, these are the wing wells. So you take that off, and then you spray it with another color. It's just, there's a lot of layers, especially on the wing wells. Like, here's the reference books I use. This is the Sculpting the Galaxy book that you asked me about, CeeCee.
Yeah.
And this is the Chronicles book. So I'm using this to find every little scar, every little detail. It's impossible to get it exact, but I tried as best I could to get where there was a scar. I tried to put a scar. So like
now,
I said,
would you say this was like your most complicated? Because I know you've done the Falcon and the Sandcrawler, so this one was your okay.
Easily. The building is harder for me. Once I get to painting's easy for me. Like painting's a breeze for me. It's the building that's a little bit more difficult. Yes, that's Humbrol Mascal. Benjamin. That is correct. Where'd Jason go?
Sorry, I'm just having a quick snack.
Oh,
I don't want to be rude.
on,
just a granola bar.
So like look at here's one wing well. That's a specific procedure to make it look a specific color. And then on the other side, it's totally different procedure to get this look. And up here too. So see how this is part that was masked and then sprayed and then washed and then misted and then sprayed again. It's just
do you write down any of the process, like any of the steps? Because I would forget. I'd look at it and be like, especially if you don't look at it all the time, I would go back to this and not maybe forget that the wash is on there because it is so subtle.
Oh yeah, I definitely wrote it down. I wrote it down. I'm gonna keep it. I don't think I plan on doing another slave one unless somebody's really interested. It would take a lot. Like, it's a lot of work. It took me 8 months to build it, and that's really going hot and heavy. Like, a lot of my free time
I felt like a therapist during this build.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I don't know, man. You got to be mentally prepared to
this is
This
where you pull up. This is where you pull up your big boy pants and put this to get to work.
Well, you also did this in what? Really 6 months, start to finish, roughly.
It was pretty much 8 months.
Was it 8? March,
yeah.
June, July,
now
August,
it's been 8 months.
Yeah, so all in 7 months. I mean, there's people who are a year in.
Oh yeah.
Some I've seen some builds year and a half.
Oh yeah,
and that's normal.
But a lot of people also put it down and then come back to it later. I did not do that. So Sean, that's scary, but it's just paint. You can paint over it and do over again. You're not ruining anything. Like like I said, I painted all 3 of my models twice because I thought they were either too dark, too light, you know, it's just paint. Just go over it with primer and do it all over, you know.
Mhm.
Chopping up a $1,500 Porsche model, that's another story. I feel
That's
like
completely
Yeah.
different story.
Yeah.
Now, did you
Yeah.
ever do you ever find yourself getting the artist curse? Because that's my issue. If I painted it, I'm gonna know where there's issues with it.
Oh
Or
yeah.
someone,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
you know, friend, family, whatever, they love me, so they lie to me all the time. They'll tell me it's great, but because I painted it, I'll be like, no, this isn't accurate. Or I know I didn't have a good reference for this, so
Yeah.
this was like, you know, I
This is a
straight
creative
bullshitted this
opening.
part. This is my artistic license, and therefore it's not accurate. It's not perfect. That's
Yeah.
what stresses me out with these two, because I'd probably end up repainting them a lot.
I did. I repainted both of them twice.
Well, there's
all three of them
also
twice. and
yeah, and like you said, you know, so I was gonna say, as a creative, you're your own worst critic, right?
yeah,
Always.
Yeah,
I mean,
like-
anybody who does creative work is always looking at it as it could be better, could be better.
that's how I look at it a lot. Like, it's hard to stop. It's hard to say, look at this thing and okay, I'm done. It's finished. It's a finished product, because you look at it and you're like, well, should I try this or try that? And like these comments are saying how it looks great, and you know, but it's hard for me because like I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Like you said, Jason, you're your own critic. I don't.
You're your own worst critic, yeah. Because you're always comparing and contrasting, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that's another issue with being a creative. It's always, it's so funny because, you know, like if I was to, not specifically me, but I'm just saying, like if you buy something from somebody else, you can put it on display and display it with pride. But if it's something you've done yourself, even if you have an equivalent skill, it just doesn't have the same. It's a weird thing that creatives go through. But yeah, and like you said, CeeCee, sometimes there's a time where you may take some creative liberties or go under some artistic license to be like, hey, I'm just gonna, you know, do this way because I don't have any reference to go with, or I don't know exactly how accurate this is. And, you know, but you know it's there. So someone else will be like, oh, what's the big deal? I don't even notice. But to you, it stands out like a big neon sign. So there's also those challenges which have nothing to do with the actual assemblage and physical painting of the kit. There's the mental challenge, which is, you know, something that I think any person in a creative mindset would undergo one way or the other.
So Benjamin, if you haven't used the Mescal for the latex yet, I've tried a bunch of different things to put it on, from paintbrushes to, you know, toothpicks. Or John put me on to these sculpting pens. I'll send you a link for them. They work amazing. They're like rubber tipped paintbrushes that they're not hairs, they're just rubber tips, and they're great. What's the shade of green? What's the shade of green and burnt red you are using? Well, there's a lot of shades of green. This is Weyerhaeuser green. This is a couple different greens, like gray green, dark. The hell's it called? I don't remember off the top of my head. And the red is Caboose Red. Like but like I said, this isn't going to look the same colors until you add, like you may paint it on, and it won't look like it's supposed to until you add the other mistings and layers and washes on top of it. That's how you get the color that you want. So like this is you know, this is obviously that part, and then like next I went to the skirt, which is like this is a pink, this is a Caboose Red, this is a then sprayed with grime, and it just, the thing about, okay, grime seems to be dark. Well, for Slave it's dark grime, but light grime I used on the Falcon, and you paint this whole thing and it looks real punchy. Like you can see it looks pretty punchy there, like bright, but then you missed it with this grime, okay, and it just lightens those punchy colors and kind of like blends it all in together. It's like this, I kept saying to my son, it's like this magic color that just makes it look Star Wars and makes it look worn and dusty, and I love it. I love when I finally get to final misting of the grime.
Now, what is the grime a mix of like paint and like alcohol or like some kind of thinner?
The grime's a paint. It's a color that ArchiveX uses. It really is like a dusty colored white, like almost like light tan. I don't know how to describe it, but like I said before, when you're spraying misting it with the airbrush, you have to thin it. You have to thin it with paint thinners or like mineral spirits or whatever. Like if you're using enamels, you use mineral spirits, paint thinner. If you're using acrylics, there's an acrylic thinner that you use so it sprays out of the airbrush way better.
So the grime is a specific color?
Yes, it's a color.
And is it one that you use on all the models?
Most of them.
That's
I've used them. I've misted all three of my models. The Falcon, it's the base color, and then you misted it at the end to blend it all together. The Sandcrawler, I used the grime at the end to give it streaks and to give it a dusty, dirty look, and also blend the colors real good. And again, with Slave One, it kind of like this is punchy, and you'll see later that it like blends it in together. So this is pre-dust, pre-misting.
It's almost like the secret ingredient that makes it look real world.
Yes.
That's interesting, yeah.
It dulls it,
Mm-hmm.
and it dulls everything and blends it together, so you're looking at it as one piece rather than individual colors. So like here, this is also another thing that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't found out from Guy Cohen. Like this scarring, this red and pink scarring continues underneath this black. Okay. And then you spray it with the black and you can see it through the black. Like it shows through. I don't know how to describe it, but it's another thing I wouldn't have thought to do had I not gotten that info from Guy Cohen.
And what was Benjamin saying? So Benjamin, yeah, this is that's actually correct, believe it or not. It's funny that you say that because a lot of people don't realize it. But let me see if I can even pull that up real quick. I don't want to throw you off, Chris, but
no, you're good.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but let me just pull this up real quick. Is it gonna allow me without doing that crazy? Yeah, it might do that weird like matrix thing.
I don't, like I said, like we talked. No, I don't seal it with a matte color or gloss. You're right. When you seal it with a matte, with a gloss, with a sealer, whether it be gloss or matte, it changes the colors. Okay, it actually dulls it or darkens it or changes what you look. So when specifically I noticed it, I did seal my first Sandcrawler because I was afraid, I was petrified to do weathering. Weathering scared me because you can go way too dark in weathering. Okay. So I sealed it and I noticed what it did is it dulled some of that grime. Okay. So then I had to add more grime onto it to bring that color back out. So I'm almost done. Like I almost have, these are almost all the pictures. I think I just almost have the final product, the final finish thing. And Benjamin,
right here, because I want to see if I can show this. I don't know if it's.
I heard that too.
Here's the thing. I'm trying to.
I think that some people have actually. I've heard.
Can you
both.
see that?
What?
Can you see that or no? See
what?
Is it showing it? Never mind. I was trying to show the actual image, but it's actually true where what's it called? Yeah, I'll do it right real quick. I'll post it up real quick if it's gonna allow me.
Yeah,
Can
I
you
had
see-
heard that that's the case, and I also heard it wasn't the case.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Oh wow.
Yeah. See how so they actually utilize that as a reference, and yeah, it's kind of a pretty cool thing that, again, one of those things in Star Wars that, we just they did some of the most randomest things at the time.
Yeah. But McQuarrie's design didn't look like a lamppost, though. McQuarrie's design looked like a beetle.
Wasn't it very round?
Yes, very round.
Yeah.
Didn't have it had a very, very small nose. It was mostly like right here and a little nose sticking out. And this was a lot more round. Like these wing wells weren't present. So that's almost finished. Okay. And I had a machine shop build me this armature. It's pretty freaking heavy. It's I welded it, and there's a hole that goes through so that I can run the wire through it out that mounting block. And that's the look. I again, I stole that idea from John Simmons because he posted a long time ago that he had an armature that looked kind of like this, and I really like the look of it. So, basically copying a very experienced painter, So
It is the most sincere form of flattery.
this is finished. This is mounted, finished. The only thing I have to do yet is I'm putting an acrylic base on here. That's going to be scribed with what it is, Slave One and Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. So this is
beautiful, man.
This is grimed. This is stained. This is weathered. The problem is with pictures, you can't see the staining, which that's my favorite part is the stains on it.
That's
And
beautiful, man.
You can see inside. There's the light up. There's a whatchamacallit, fiber optics.
Yeah, it looks great. That even looks great on the pedestal like that. What a beautiful display, Chris.
Thank you.
What a beautiful display, man. Wow.
I love it with the helmet and the statue in the back.
I do too.
I know.
And the funny thing is, if you I didn't take a picture of it, I should have. But when you dim the lights down and turn the lights on the Slave One, it shines on and highlights. They shine directly on Boba Fett's helmet. It's
nice.
actually really cool. I love it like that.
It's cool.
So you can see some of the staining. Go ahead, Jason.
This looks magnificent, Chris. This is phenomenal, man. Congrats.
Thank you.
Honestly, I going through the journey with you on this thing, there was a lot of ups and downs and a lot of chaos involved with this thing, but to see the end result, man, I tip my hat to you because this was worth all of it. I mean, this is such a beautiful piece, and and I say this with all due respect, but we going through this process and going through this build and assisting you and both of us doing the deep dives that we did. When I say this with all due respect, there's so many not so many, but there's quite a few we've seen in collections, and the detail that you've put into this, the extra time and the extra things that you've added to this to give it that accuracy and little extra TLC, just it really shows it's coming through as a finished piece, and it's really showing. Overall, you really see that fine detail, and it's definitely one of the better ones I've seen out there. And they're all amazing. They're all amazing in their own right, but this is something special. And again, congrats on this, because I remember even trying to acquire this kit and trying to figure it all out. And I mean, the whole journey was
you thought I was
so long ago, right, man?
You thought I was gonna not be your friend anymore, remember?
Dude, this thing was.
Yeah, you tell the story. Well, before you tell the story, I just want to. This is the hoods that I was telling you about, and then take it off with the magnets so you can see all this I just want to see it. Like, I probably won't take it off that often, but I still want to see it.
No, it's great because look at all the work under there. I mean,
Yeah.
even that for reference purposes or just to show, again, so much of that work that's hidden. And it's great detail. I mean, it's beautifully laid down. They assembled this in such a unique way to make it look like it's an actual, you look at these ships, and I think this is the fascination with Star Wars. All of the stuff that they've thrown together, whether it's a piece of a washing machine or a refrigerator or a camera or whatever it may be, it looks like something that would actually exist in the real world. It doesn't look made up. It looks like, okay, this is something that could possibly exist out there.
Now, you know what I didn't put in the pictures was the close-ups of Boba Fett. I wish I'd done that. Like, here's some of the weathering, like the streaks.
Another one of the screw holes too.
Yeah, and this is the wing wells painted, and
you can see
Is
the
that
misting
piece there near the cockpit. Is that the styrene too?
Yep.
Yep.
That's the T-tracks right there. Yep.
Yeah.
Now this piece here is weird. Okay, so I think I spent like $80 on a kit, right? And somebody told me this piece was in that kit, and I'm looking all over for this. I'm like, this is not in here. Okay. And what it is it's a piece like maybe this long, and literally you have to cut a half an inch out of it. And I spent $80 for that half an inch. Don't tell my wife, but I spent $80 for that half an inch, So it's like, man, it's just.
But even figuring out, Chris, that you have to,
Yeah.
because you're looking for that little piece, right? Just by
Yeah.
assumption, and then you realize, oh, it's this big piece, and I got to cut it down. It's just
right.
Yeah, it's enough to do the drive you a little crazy.
Yeah, so like this piece, these pieces, this piece, all these little tiny pieces on the edge here, they weren't in the kit. Those are all model kit pieces. And here, CeeCee, is where I intentionally sprayed a little heavy on the grime to give it like a, I don't know, some kind of like faded look, So right there on the wing well, those spots.
Just natural wear and tear, yeah.
Yeah, you can see the grime like heavier. It's like sprayed blotchy. And here you can see like the staining that I was talking about. This is like rust colored stain here and here. And so, Jason, tell the story.
Yeah, so what's funny is, so these kits are pretty hard to come by. They're not really something that are being cast or recast, or well, recasting isn't really something that's done with these things out of respect for the kits. But it's not like you go to a website and you buy something or there's a release or a drop. So every once in a while, if one comes up, you jump on it. And somebody had posted one for sale. And at the time, there's always multiple collectibles coming out at any given time. So, sometimes a good time to buy, sometimes a bad time to buy.
Mm-hmm.
So me and Chris were both trying to chase one of these down, and he hits me up and he said,
Jason, when he hit you up, when it first came about, actually, I think John Simmons told me about it because he knew I was looking for one. And the guy had it painted, mostly painted. Okay. And I figured he wanted a lot of money for it. Like the kit price is exorbitant, and then the painted price is way more exorbitant. Okay, so I told the guy, he's like, make me an offer. I'm like, listen, I can't even offer you anywhere near what you probably want for this thing. So I said, listen, my buddy Jason would probably want it. I know he wants one. He could probably take care of it right now. So I sent him to you, Jason. Now keep going.
So Chris sends them to me. I mean, it ended up, I don't want to get too much into the further details after the fact, but we'll just tell the fun part of the story and then cut it off from there. But so Chris sends them to me with the assumption that this is going to be like $2,000+, which they usually are, right? So you have to take into consideration that some work was done, and not the best work, but the paint work and stuff. Well, wasn't too bad, but some of the process had been done. Some actual model kits that we talked about, like donor kits that you go out and buy. That's what we call them, donor kits. Had already been acquired and was included. So, the assumption of like, oh, this is going to be like $3,000. I don't have $3,000 to spend at the moment. Chris is like, I'll pass them on to you. So I'm like, all right. So then I talked to the guy and he's like, yeah, I just need to get rid of this thing. It's so much more than I thought it was, so much more work than I anticipated. I'm just never going to finish this. I need to recuperate some of my investment back. I'm like, all right. And I was like, yeah, let me know. And I'm thinking he's gonna say, like you said, Chris, 2,000 plus. And what I think he came back to me at what, like $1,200 or something. Like,
$1,200.
yeah, it was like something
Yeah.
ridiculous. So I called Chris, and I'm literally like not being silly, I'm cracking up, like I'm laughing,
Laughing hysterically.
because we're like 3 months in of Chris chasing this thing down with no leads, no
Yeah.
no results of any kind, and I'm like, dude, I'm like, you're gonna hate me. And of course, Chris would have paid a 1,200 like that. That's a lot different than paying, 3,000. And I'm like, look, he only wants $1,200 for it. And he's like, you motherfucker. It was just, I mean, what happened after that was.
He's like, I don't want to tell
funny.
you because I don't want you to hate me. I don't want you to get mad at me.
That was, and for real, like I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want to tell you. And he's like, tell me. And I'm like, and he was like, you know what? I can't even talk to you right now. He's like, just go fuck yourself. But you have to, it's funnier because it was literally months of trying to find one of these with like just no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But the money didn't end up, it ended up in the long run costing probably what the original price would have been to buy one of these kits, because it ended up being a nightmare. It was, it just, everything that could have went sideways. But that initial part of it was super funny because Chris was like, hey, I'm just going to pass it on to you. Buy it right now. And we're thinking, crazy money, guys, like $1,200, take it off my hands. And we're just like, this is nuts. And yeah, that was
headache
funny.
was just karma because you didn't just turn around and let Chris take it.
Oh, he offered.
Oh,
He
okay.
offered.
I did. I offered it up.
He offered. Yep, he offered me.
And Chris is
but
like, I
no.
dodged a bullet. Thanks, Jason.
I do feel that way now. Yes.
Well, initially, I don't think Chris, at the time too, I don't think you were as confident in your skill set, right? No. Now it's something you would have been like, yeah, I'll take that and go to work on it. I think there was a little bit of fear there with this kit being so desirable and you wanting one so bad for so long. I think that chance didn't want to be taken. But I did. I initially CeeCee, like, I mean, it's Chris, it's, I mean, this, in that situation, if it was Matt, Christy, anything like that, I would easily, hey, if you want it, it's yours. But yeah, it was funny though. I literally didn't want to tell him the price because I knew.
Oh, he couldn't talk. He was laughing so hard. Like.
I was laughing. You're like, just get it out, spit it out, and I'm like, dude, I can't.
Yeah, it took me a lot of twisting to get I twisted his arm. He didn't want to tell me for like 15 minutes. I was like, just fucking tell me already.
Well, imagine passing on your grill, right? Thinking, I don't have $4,000 or $3,000 to spend right now, and then you pass it on to somebody else with that assumption. The person's like, oh, I got it for $500. You're like, Newman, you're like, that motherfucker. Like, it's.
Well, now I think I'll learn from you guys and always ask for the price before I pass it on to someone else.
Yes, good.
Exactly. But at the time, even afterwards, I was like seriously depressed because I'm thinking to myself, I'm never going to find one of these sons of bitches. Like, I really didn't think I would. And then John hooked me up with a guy for another kit, and somehow I mentioned it to him that I was looking for the Slave One. He's like, oh, I got one if you want it. I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. So worked out great.
That's why I think that's when we just will like, hey, whatever you're getting rid of, we'll just package it all together, throw a bunch of money at it. And like, if you have these, if you're not going to build these, we'll take them and build them. And grab the few things, and that was well worth it, because it was that chance you don't let it go, like you get a jump on it.
Logan asked how I turn the lights on. Right now it just has a wire going down to a plug. I'm going to I have wiring in the wall so that I can connect it to that, and it's going to be wireless. Like, it's going to be part of my Alexa. Like, I'll be able to turn it on withAlexa. So I'll just say, oh shit, mine too. Mine went off. Damn it. Alexa, stop.
Go to the Alexa app.
Damn it. They probably went off in all my house.
I know. Remember Steve turned all the lights on in my house that night?
Yeah.
I was like, God damn it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Recently, I was driving, and I don't know what I hit on my phone. But my phone's like a really old Android, and I think like I hit the home button too often, and it just pulled up Google, and it's like giving me suggestions, like ask me like, hey Google, like where's the nearest Chick-fil-A? And I'm like, Google, shut the fuck up. Like, I'm just like trying to get it to like get off my phone so I can pull up the map. And I was just screaming at it, just obscenities, like just get off my, like nothing I did could fix it. It took like a good
Well, 'cause,
5
yeah, the more
minutes,
you
but-
get frustrated, the more it's trying to like answer you back.
yeah,
Shut
it's
the
like,
fuck up! I don't know what that is.
I didn't hear that. Did you
Yeah.
call me a motherfucker? Like, was that?
Mm.
Oh, it was bad. It was so
Yeah.
bad.
But yeah, this was a lot of work.
What a journey, man, huh?
And I keep saying it's not for amateurs. It's not for people with not experience, but like I've only done 3. So I still consider myself an amateur, you know, but
But I wasn't even building this thing and it stressed me out.
yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
a huge commitment.
Oh yeah.
It is, yeah,
I
it's a
think
good way
it's
of putting
just-
it.
Like, we joke that you can't find someone to throw money at this problem. Like, you really, unless, you know, and if you do, it's absorbent, and it's like, you can't. And this is why and I appreciate, like, you don't, if you just see this in someone's collection, unless you go through or see like the in progress photos of like what you started with and what you, especially the garage kit, and knowing like it wasn't, you just didn't piece it together and then paint it, and then it's a lot of weathering involved. That's what I think a novice would envision. Like me, without knowing anything, would think, oh yeah, you just snap stuff together, glue shit together, and then it's all the painting is really where the skill comes in. But no, from start to finish, it is a commitment, it is a project, and it looks like it. You did it. It's an amazing piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was even, I mean, that's so well said, because like I was saying, if we go through collector spotlights, you see these studio scale pieces and you do sort of take them for granted when they're on display. The appreciation of walking through this process is so different. I remember even when I was on vacation, right? I'm literally on vacation with my family, and I'm at the lawn. I was talking to Steve Nyson, and he's like, yeah, you know, go check this out, this, that, and the other. So I go on over, and I get Chris on. I'm like, Chris, what are you doing? Oh, I'm out with the boys. You know, I'm like, just hold on, wait 1 minute. So I'm at the launch bay, and they have the Slave One that Jason and CeeCee built on display, and I'm like, pat, 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 like 70 pictures, just boom, 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 bombarding his phone. He's like, keep them coming, keep them coming, keep them coming, keep coming. I was like, he's like, I need shots of this, I need shots of that, I need shots of this, and like just everything. I mean, and that's, you know, I was in Florida doing that, and like trying to just everything we could do to get like every little last detail, every little last screw or nut or like you know, reference to accuracy was just. I mean, it was fun, but it was like I said, I didn't even build this thing, and it even caused me a little bit of stress and angst. But to see it finished like this, I have such an appreciation for it.
I have a couple hundred, I'd say about 300 or more reference pictures of people's builds and like pictures from the museum, and they were littering my phone up. Like I just like it was mostly all pictures of Slave One, less pictures of my kids, and it was like, I can't keep these pictures on here. So I ended up coming up with a folder on Facebook and dumping them all in there. Like it's just, I became obsessed with getting this thing exactly how I wanted it to be, you know? So, and like I've heard of how much this kit was prior to doing it. And I've heard how much people were charging to build it. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. I'm thinking to myself, how could it be that much money? After doing this, I completely understand why it is the cost that it is. You know, it's just, it's a lot of work.
I mean, CeeCee put it well, where it's that commitment. It takes a lot of time out of your life to really do this right and do the right way. But man, that really is a work of art in and of itself, Chris. And
thanks.
You know, again, man, congrats! Like it just what a process it was. And you know, all the assistance that you know I was able to give, or you know, even though you know may not have been much, you know, I had a lot of fun, you know, kind of helping you out with this thing and getting it to you know be where it's at. So you did an amazing job.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I do. I honestly would come to you a lot and say, okay, like I'm not somebody who want to hear it's great. I want you to give me constructive criticism. I'm not a person who gets upset with constructive criticism. I want to know what doesn't look right so that I can fix it and do it the right way. you know.
Yeah, and that's
So
important. I was able to tell you like, oh, this looks fantastic. Don't doubt yourself. Like, oh, you
yeah,
want to change this or
yeah.
redo that, and yeah, there's a lot of that too.
Don't blow smoke up my ass, Jason. Just tell me exactly, you know, what.
Yeah,
Sometimes
What?
well,
you don't want like
it's
a
not going to help you.
yeser who's gonna say yes to everything. You want
Yes.
someone to be like, oh yeah, this is
Yes.
wrong. This is like
Yes.
2 degrees too dark or something like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes. Like I remember asking John Simmons. I sent him some pictures. I'm like, give me some kind of criticism. Give me some kind of.
He's too polite though.
He's polite. He's a very polite guy.
He's
I
very
love him to
polite.
death.
Yeah.
He's a very sweet guy, and I
I don't think he
wanted
wants
him
to offend anybody.
Yeah, I wanted actual. I told him like, don't sugarcoat it.
Give it
Tell
to
me
me straight.
Give it to me straight. Yeah. The cockpit is made out. It is. Jason, maybe you can help me with this. It's
I don't
vac
I don't know
formed.
the exact. Is it like a thin plexi
It's a
or
thin plexiglass,
Yeah.
plastic. It's the guy who I got it
It's like
from.
it's like a thicker I think it's close. I would say it's pretty close to a plexi base.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
because
thin.
it's thin. It's pretty transparent, but it's not.
It's
It's not very
squeezable.
fragile. Yeah.
It's not fragile. No, I had to cut it with the tin snips to get it, and then sand it. You know, use a Dremel to really get it good.
Yeah. So, like shape it and
Shape
yeah.
it. I was.
Because I remember peeling the film back, thinking like, oh, this is just going to be like a thin piece of plastic, and yeah, you're right. It wasn't very thick, but it's sturdy but pliable, and yeah, it's interesting how
Yeah.
it was made.
I was afraid. That's the thing that made me the most afraid to do was cutting that, because I was so worried that I was going to cut it too short and like it would be like a space here or a space here. I literally must have like cut it and then went out to my garage and sanded off a little bit, come back, fit it, sand it off a little bit. Like I was in and out like 50 times trying to get it exactly perfect.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well, another thing about that, Chris, that we were running into with the reference in the images was the cockpit. The reason why I mentioned this at the very beginning when we first started, the reason why that was such a challenge is because most reference images you had flash or the lighting off the plexiglass, if you want to call it, in the cockpit was making it so you couldn't clearly make out the details of what went where, and that was like another head scratcher all in and of itself. That became like another hole to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna find a picture of the. You can't see Boba Fett in these pictures, so I'm gonna find the picture I have of Boba Fett and just show it. David asked me, what's my next project? I actually took like a 2-week, like my other models. I did as soon as I was done with Falcon, I jumped on the Sandcrawler. As soon as I was done with the Sandcrawler, I jumped right on Sand One. I'm actually taking a little tiny break just to like reconnect with my wife and kids, so but I plan on doing Y-wing and an X-wing. Those are my next. I'm planning on doing those, so that's the next thing. See if I can find a good pic of the Boba Fett. I don't know if I saved that or not. Go ahead, talk some of yourself. I'll find it.
So what do you think, CeeCee, after seeing it all said and done, would you ever maybe not undertake building and assembling one, but would you ever consider putting some studio scales in the collection, or is it still something that's not really?
I was telling Chris if it was small, then I might consider it and just see. I think I'm not gonna have like the Millennium Falcon be my first project. I'm not. No.
Yeah, that's true.
But if it was something small, just to see how it goes. I mentioned in the chat, like I'm just real bad about finishing projects.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if it was like, God, even something like the probe droid, like that, something that size, I think would be interesting. Because I also have that, like I mentioned, artist curse where someone could tell me it looks amazing, but I'm gonna be like, looks like trash.
And you're beating yourself up.
Yep. Like it's just, and I think even Dan Schudluck's mentioned that, and his work's amazing as well. His helmets, he does a great job, just like Chris does with his models, and he still always has something to say about it, or not happy.
Now, what I'm wondering might be good if you want to try your hand at it. One, because the barrier to entry is so low financially, and like you said, it's more or less like putting something, starting on something, and then being like, oh, I'll get to it, and then 9 months later, it's it's still sitting there. But the tie bomber, so the studio scale of that is 1/48. So which is, I mean, you can hold it in your hand. It's the
Yeah.
double. They call it the double chili tie. That's a good project because I think there's not a lot to it. Well, I mean, there is. There could be, depending on what direction you go in, but I think that's a pretty decent um, starter kit for size and for not taking on something that would take you, a lot of time. And I think for displayability purposes, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece once displayed.
Now, do you think it would be problematic? Because I've heard, I mean, we've joked, but just finding those kits or
That
knowing
will
who to talk to, that sort of thing, getting into the hobby.
that So some kits are like a slave one. You really have to do a lot of due diligence. You have to network with people. You have to, but other kits like a TIE fighter, a TIE bomber, an ATST, I wouldn't say they're easy to come by, but they're becoming easier to come by because you have people like Sci-Fi Studio Skill, Mac Tripley, Marcel, and those guys that are making kits. I think they're initially like, rendered, they're scanned, then rendered and printed and then cast and whatnot. So a lot of it is done for you. And then there's just, people who, believe it or not, you can scour like the RPF or eBay and find kits, but those ones tend to be a little bit easier to come by and a little bit more common. Just because more of them were made, they're a little bit more accessible financially, a couple $100 versus a couple thousand. So yeah, those ones, there's a couple sites we can just go to and actually buy the kit, or go to a Facebook group or forum and say, hey, I'm interested in this, and they'll get it out to you. And actually, some of them will even include like the armature, like the metal bar and everything you need to
Oh,
like
wow. Okay.
put it on display. Yeah, I'll send you some info after, so you
Thank
can
you.
take a peek and yeah, to have a look at it.
Yeah, that'd be great. And the boba on this, do you have like water decals on
No, that's painted.
that's painted?
Yeah, I put on magnifying lenses and painted them, the everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
And then this is him in the cockpit. So
It's like,
You
hey
can't
guys.
you can't see it unless you like. It's hard to see with the glass. So yeah, but yes, Boba's holding a flask. Probably because need a lot of drinks to actually.
Been a tough day. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's the slave one.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Chris.
Thanks
Yeah.
for. It was your idea to share it. I wasn't. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I thought, well, I mean, with all the work that, like I said, with all the work that went into it and all the frustrations, I figured the end result would be a great thing to document and share and, be able to like sit and talk about. Yeah, it was a lot of fun being able to go over this and revisit it. And
I just
I'm
feel
looking forward to
sorry
doing
for
more.
your inbox, the amount of requests you're gonna get with people wanting you to paint one for them.
Thanks, Scott.
yeah,
I a slave one, that's a commitment. So like
yeah,
I have two guys that I'm doing things for right now. Actually three. And the slave one would be it would cost quite a bit. So it's not a cheap
well, like we
thing.
said, there's a
and
there's a
even
reason why they cost what they do.
yeah. Plus finding a kit is a whole nother. I actually might be able to get another kit possibly, but it still would be hard to find. So
Now, do you think there's hope
they're
on
going to be
the horizon with like Merlin models and?
I
well.
don't know about the slave one. There might be.
Yeah,
I
slave
don't know.
one. I talked to Michael the one day, and he's like, "Oh, we would like to do a slave one, but it wouldn't." He said it would be tough. It'd be tough. Plus, slave one, it has so many details to it, and if it doesn't have those details, it falls flat. You know,
It
it's
does.
just
It loses its character. It's not like an AT-AT or an ATST or a snow speeder where you just have muted colors and you
yeah,
can kind of take some creative liberties. You have to
yeah,
get the slave one right, or you're
yeah,
right. It loses its off
yeah,
factor.
yeah. You have to do it the right way. And like Black Series or 3 vintage collection figures, the newer ones, they look good, but they're not Slave One. So yeah, I
And
enjoyed
then
it.
also the cost of the kit. That's another thing. So some
Yeah,
models can cost you 1,500 or 2,000, and now that's painted and finished and completed. Maybe an X-wing or a TIE, or an ATA, something along those lines. It's a couple grand. But the kit itself in garage, kit form is upwards of $2,500. That's with no work. That's
no,
with no assemblage, no painting, no donor kits, no donor parts, no lighting. So it just keeps adding up. So when you see these in people's collections, if they commission somebody to do it, you're talking about a $5,000-6,000 piece. And again, it's like you were saying, Chris. There's a reason why, and
yeah,
now being on the back end of that and seeing all that goes into it, there's a different appreciation, and because there's a lot of talk that goes around when we go over a studio scale of the price, the price, the price. And again, CeeCee, like you mentioned earlier, when you're seeing it on display, that's one thing because you're not really taking into consideration. There's no reason to either. All the detail and all the headache that does go into it, all the work and time and commitment, because you're only seeing it as is. But when you start seeing that step by step process, it becomes a little bit overwhelming, and you start to realize and appreciate the piece a little bit more. You start to see it a little bit differently, but then it starts to make a lot more sense. Instead of being like, "Oh, that guy's crazy, 5 grand, he's nuts." Well, it's like, okay, well, that's for almost 3/4 of a year of your life and your time invested into this and all the due diligence and whatnot. Yeah, it makes sense.
to give you. So if I was to bring up this picture, okay, so um, I when you look at this picture and you see all of these little parts, okay, and and um, every single one of these parts, every single one of them, okay, is filed and cut and shaped. There is not one piece in this on this entire kit that isn't like shaved or filed so that
No,
the
you don't
edges
just
look
take it
clean.
and stick it. Yeah,
No, you don't.
everything needs cleaning and filing, and you have
Every
to refine everything.
single little piece, and even like down those two tubes down the sides here, like everything needs to be filed so that it fits where it needs to go. So
Some
it's
things need to be reshaped. Some
yeah,
things, if some things, rather than taking away for it to fit properly, you need to add to it. Whether that means using like resin or putty or a mixture of both. Or one thing
yeah,
I do when I'm shaping my models is it creates a dust, a resin dust, and I keep it in one area where I scoop all that dust up. And sometimes you can add a little drop of glue and mix it, and it hardens the resin again. So this way you can add it too if you take a little too much off or it's not fitting properly. And then that's another thing. It's just each individual piece. It's not like you're working on the model as a whole. You're working on each individual piece before you fit it in. You don't just start snapping pieces in. Even with the donor parts, even those need a little bit of cleaning up. Although they're a lot more refined and a lot easier to work with, to get them to coincide with the garage style pieces that have been, cast and start to, either shrink or, change size and warp a little bit. There's a lot of that. There's, vats of hot water you have to sit pieces in so they can reshape, and
yeah.
heat guns. I mean, there's just so much that goes into it. And it sounds mentally and physically exhausting. It does talking about it, but for those, and CeeCee, you're creative, you might understand. Sometimes part of that, as I mentioned earlier, is somewhat of part of the enjoyment. As frustrating as it gets, and when you do want to rip your hair out and just want to scream and throw the thing, it is part of the enjoyment. It's part of what you get in that zone. And once you're in that zone, it's just that's where you'll live for a little bit.
Dude, I would take. Okay, so my job is I have some free time in my job because I make my own schedule. So I would just stay home and work on this thing by myself. Nobody's home for 10 hours. And like 8 hours would go by. I wouldn't even notice it. It would just happen so fast because I'm so involved and so in it, just completely engulfed in it. You know what I mean? So there were a lot of days where I just spent the whole workday just working on it.
Yeah. And I can always tell if I call you when you're working on a model. I get, yeah, oh, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm going to the moon tomorrow. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, go do your thing.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I loved it, and I love doing this. So I'm gonna keep doing it. I built a workshop in my garage just to start doing this now. So
yeah. This is a good comment, and this makes sense. You know, so if I did all that work and somebody came up and offered me $5,000 or $7,000 for it, I'd be like, go back and Karen before I set you on fire. And it's true. There's some of that where you're just like, because so much goes into it, you almost can't put a price on it.
Yeah.
You know, and Chris, we've had this conversation, doing something yourself versus commissioning it, because when someone's commissioning something, and this is a reason why you purposely chose not to take on too much work, is because you don't want to get into that space where you're doing it just to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to build it as if it's your own, because if you're doing it just to get it done and you're churning these things out, it's not going to have as much detail and as much love and as much, you know, input. It's going to look fantastic, don't get me wrong, but you're going to lose a little bit of that momentum because, you know, you're in a time crunch, and you sometimes have to, you know, just, all right, this works, this is good, and you know, it's a 9, I can't get it to a 10, or else it's going to take another 3 months.
Yep.
And there's that compromise by the person who's commissioning it and the person who's doing the commission. You know, there's this, like, you know, this understanding between the two, that like, hey, you know, you have to realize this is going to be 97%, not 100%.
Yep.
And that's okay. You know, people accept that because it's worth it. But you know, if you're keeping things minimized, it allows you to really go full-fledged and do the whole thing.
So what I've decided is the ones that I'm doing, like, I'm going to, like, I want a Y-wing. I want to do a Y-wing or an X-wing next. Okay. I'm going, like, the guy who wants a Y-wing, I will do 2 Y-wings at one time, because then I'm pulling out the paint to do this layer, and I'm doing this layer and then this layer. I'm doing it at the exact same time, because I don't want to do a Y-wing and then do another Y-wing later, because I kind of lost my passion for it.
You're keeping the momentum going.
Yes. So like, that's why I'm doing Y-wings for this guy, and then X-wing for this guy, for myself at the same time. So
well, it's like with the sandcrawl. The sandcrawls were almost done in tandem. I mean, not completely, but it was done close enough where you still had the consistency and the momentum going. Where, because you know, I had the opportunity to view it in hands, and seeing the detail up close and seeing, you know, what you did on the other one was just, you almost couldn't tell the two apart. And that's, you know, and having that continuity and momentum going. You're right, doing it and having to revisit it 6 months or a year down the road, I feel like, you know, there's a lot to be desired at that point.
Yeah. So this question here, how do you get past the fear of making mistakes, or how do you handle it once a mistake is made?
That's a great question. Yeah.
There's really not any mistakes you can't fix. I mean, if you break something, you glue it. If you break it, and you glue it and putty it and sand it. Like, and like I said about fear of painting it to mess it up, I messed up all 3 of these things and repainted them a second time because I didn't like it. It's just paint. You just paint over top of it, you know. Or the only thing I was worried about was the cockpit glass, because then I would have to source it out from this guy and wait for a while for it to come back to me. It's just, that's what my fear for that was. But anything else, so what? It breaks, you just fix it. I mean, you just glue it back together, or fill in the hole, or whatever you did wrong. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. That's
how you, I think that's how you get part of your sort of arsenal of building techniques. That's a great question too. Like the fear of, what if I damage this thing? I just spent $800 on this kit. And that's the best way, like you said, Chris, is making mistakes is almost something you want to happen, because that's how you start to figure out. Yeah, and you start to figure out, like, hey, this thing can take a lot more than I expected, or I can do a lot more to this than, you know, maybe you envisioned something, but you were afraid to actually apply that technique or
Yep.
go at it. And now you realize, hey, I can drill right through this thing or break this or jam this or add this and realize like, because when all said and done, I can bring it all back together.
I had
There's
to
nothing
chuckle
you-
because I thought of Bob Ross. He's like, "There's no mistakes, only happy accidents."
Yeah. That's it.
We've
Yeah.
come across a lot of happy accidents. I don't remember. Didn't there was a couple of them we talked about, Jason? I had a couple happy accidents that were like,
Yeah, there was like 2 or 3. There was one specific. Why can't I remember it? You're right, because we were both like, "Oh, yeah,
I don't remember what it was, but I was like, holy shit, I fucked this up, but it turned out way better. Like, it just
there's
was
so
like,
many steps, man."
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, the happy accidents are great, you know. So yeah, but what do you think? You think we cut it short, or we bore them enough, or?
No, I think I mean I gotta say this is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I love
Um,
talk. I could talk all night about this. It's just, you know.
And what's
it's-
great is as Chris was as the decision was made to not just like, oh, let's do this and let's try to make it accurate and figure out what we can find out on this thing. When it turned into like, hey, let's get every little last detail on the actual ILM model and copy that as well, like pieces you won't see, different screws and things like that that you don't see on other Slave ones. That actually inspired me as well. I'm in the middle of a build for a Vader TIE, what they call either the X1 or Vader's TIE Fighter, the one with the bent wings.
The
So
one I
I
always
decided,
mess up.
okay,
The one I always
yeah,
mess
the one
up.
you always, the X-wing. You call the X1 the X-wing.
Every time he says
So-
X1, I'm thinking it's an X-wing, and it's actually
The
a Vader. It's the Vader tie, right, Jason?
The Vader TIE. So what Chris decided to do ended up inspiring me to go ahead and take that model and make it as close to the ILM one as possible. And there's some great reference pics that I think not only can you see in the Chronicles book and I think Sculpting a Galaxy, but that Jason Eaton actually took of the model itself, and he got some really good up close images. So what I was able to do was basically some of the castings and the resin kits, are cast so you can assemble them. But what I did was stripped a lot of it. I stripped a lot of the actual pieces off. So or a bolt or a nut or whatever, I would just, and this is talking about like damaging the model. Like I was literally taking pieces that needed to be there and just wiping them right off with the Dremel,
Yep.
shaving them right off the model, and then taking the donut part and putting that in. And then you get to the point where I remember I found this really random model place in like the middle of Central Mass, and I said, hey, I'm looking for this kit and that kit, and the woman had all these old kits, and she brings out this big tub, and she's like, here, dig through this. And ironically, remember, Chris, what I found? Like 3 or 4 parts in there that I needed?
Yeah, you
Literally.
found a lot. Yeah.
So I'm sitting there for like an hour. I took a I was like, Chris, you gotta look at this. Boom, 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 boom. And I start sending pictures, and I'm digging through this kit for like
And
an
I
hour and a half.
I asked him, I'm like, you went there with your wife, didn't you? Your wife is sitting out in the car with her daughter.
She's sitting in
Like,
the car, yeah. I'll be out in 10
And
minutes.
you're-
I'll be out in 10 minutes.
you're in the store for like an hour or so.
Yeah, he's like, you're still in the store. I'm like, yeah. So I'm digging through this bin, and all of a sudden I'm IDing parts, and I had a parts list up. Because if you go to different, sites, they'll highlight things, and this is from this, and I'm IDing these parts as I'm digging through, and I'm like, this is this is that, and then even screws. I'm like, Chris, what do you think about this? He's like, oh, like an RC place would have that, like radio control cars. So I go up, and sure enough, they're like, oh yeah, we have these like socket screws, and so strip those off and put those in, and so that's been a lot of fun. And I wouldn't have done that otherwise had you not chose to go in the direction you went in. That inspired me to pretty much do the same and get mine as close to studio scale accuracy as possible. So I'm building one that is pretty much going to have, I'd say, about 50% garage kit, 50% donor, and original
So
final parts.
when you shave off those parts and put the actual model kit parts on, like the model kit parts are crisp and sharp, and
Oh, they're so pristine.
resin cast parts they always have a little bit of edge wear or something, whatever you want to call it. Like it's not quite pristine.
Yeah, there's that
Yes.
cleanup, that warpage, that that jankiness to them, to each piece that you gotta kind of work on. But
Part
yeah,
A.
it was.
Part A, part B. This is why we have you on here, CeeCee. Yep.
But yeah, no, it was a good inspiration because it turned the project on its head, and instead of making it more frustrating and more daunting for me, it actually made it a lot more fun. It prolonged it, sure enough, but I've had a lot more fun going and getting the donor kits and parts and, figuring out what's what. And it's also, bringing Chris into it and be like, hey, what do you think this is? Like, oh, this looks like this. And I know
Phillips
this is
head
from
screw.
that. Yeah, even that, or
Yep.
pieces that you've come across by building your models. You're like, hey, I saw this. This is from this kit. That's from that kit. And you start to realize, again, the continuity across the board of how much pieces these kits actually have in common and share. And when you narrow it down, there's a handful of kits they just went ham on and pulled them apart. Like, let's use it for this. Let's use it for that. And it's been a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll, in the next maybe month or two, I should be finished. We'll revisit. And it's nothing like the Slave One by any means. It'd be a much shorter show, but I've been documenting it. So once that's built and finished, we can go with some.
Well, if yours is a smaller one, maybe we can combine two, like your X-wing and your X1 and whatever. I'm probably gonna do an X-wing next because I'm still waiting on a cast for the Y-wing, so it'll probably be an X-wing. And I'm actually going to paint and build a T-70 X-wing from the sequels. I don't like sequels, but I'm gonna paint that and sell it. So I'm gonna paint it quick and get it out there. So maybe we can combine the two.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. And just even with my build, hats off to a lot of great guys in the community. I had a lot of help from a lot of fantastic people who were able to let me know what parts are what, where I can find them, where I can source them from. And it's hard being patient when you're in the middle of a build to wait on things because you want to keep that momentum going and you're excited and the anticipation. But just to help you get in that the camaraderie and networking that takes place is fantastic, and I love it. It's one of those things that is really great.
I have to give a lot of credit to John Simmons, like a lot. He helped me a lot, and also Guy Cohen. Like he may not know it, but I took his formula for paint and used that. So a lot of credit to both those guys.
Guy, Jason Eaton has been a great help with a lot of info and details. Lee Ralph as well.
Jason Eaton's been a huge inspiration to me lately because, like I said, all those model kit parts that I bought, I may pull out one little piece like this, but there's a whole bunch of other pieces in there that I'm going to use when I start scratch building projects. Take make my own kit and put parts on it. I have something planned coming up for next year. That's gonna be
that's right. I forgot. That'll be fantastic.
I have a big one planned for next year, so we'll definitely have to do a show on that one.
Yeah, so definitely a thank you and a hats off. And like I said, Lee Ralph was somebody who he was more helpful in the sense of whenever I felt like I didn't have enough confidence to take on something specific, he was able to answer questions in a way that was like, hey, kind of like what we talked about a little while ago, where there's really no right or wrong way to approach this, and making mistakes isn't a make or break. So that gave me a little bit less hesitation and more confidence to say, hey, I'm just gonna tear the thing apart and
jump right in,
just dive right in. And I'm glad I did. So
that's what happened with me. I didn't get the MR Falcon. I was like, I need to have a big Falcon in my collection, and I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna, if I fuck it up, whatever. I try it, and look where I am now. I'm like jumping right in on Slave One. So just gotta do it, So, but I think we should end it there.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, CeeCee, so much for joining us. Very glad you were able to jump on with us.
Thanks to sitting through my bullshit technical issues too.
I
wonder
what happened.
I think it's StreamYard, Chris. StreamYard tends to have some kinks from time to time because everything can be running fluid on each end. But we will be back tomorrow night. I think 10 p.m. Eastern, right?
I won't be.
Chris won't be, but I will. CeeCee will, and we'll be joined with Matt and Steve. And if anybody else is going to be joining, we'll mention that as we jump on. But visit back with us tomorrow evening for a couple hours. We'll be, chatting about the weekly news, the virtual con, New York City Comic Con, all the drops, releases. CeeCee has some good updates for us in regards to some of the artists and artwork and prints, which is CeeCee, by the way, thank you for being such a fantastic help with that. I think a lot of people in the group have been very grateful for the input and you being, on top of that. So yeah, anybody watching, still hanging out, come back and join us tomorrow night. And from there, we'll sign off and say goodnight.
Night, guys.